Joe Biden did not even bother to come to India for a bilateral visit in 4 years. They divided the USA into like 15 tribes.
Trump has said, not on one occasion, but multiple occasions, that as soon as I become president, I'll stop this Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours.
He's a very bombastic person. Trump being a very narcissistic politician.
How do you think Trump is going to oppose this whole China factor?
He will try to extract the most from China by restarting the trade war.
This whole thing is never that you are my enemy. He says, can we strike a deal which is in my favor?
We have a partnership with the US. Japan, Australia are also getting much closer to India because of the US factor.
Also that he is perceived to be a friend of Prime Minister Modi, you know. And
that factor is there.
Abki baar Trump sir.
We have more than 4 million Indian Americans there, and many of them are now very close to Trump. They are going to be in very senior positions in the new Trump administration from 2025.
Israel, Australia, UAE and Japan. Why are these our friends and why not others?
I picked these 7 out of the 36 because the depth and the intensity of our ties in terms of economic security.
If the Americans are so picky about it, nahi dena aapko, right? Or we'll give it to you, just buy it. But we are not going to make in India. We are not going to transfer technology, etc. Then how does India do it?
So the US is not necessarily our topmost defense supplier. Sometimes we have chosen the Israeli option over the US option.
Hello friends, welcome to GAP, the Gaurav Arya Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have a very special guest, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, who's Professor and Dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs and also the host of the immensely popular show on Doordarshan, Indian Diplomacy. Dr. Chaulia, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Gaurav. You're doing great work.
Thank you very much. Honor and a privilege. First of all, many congratulations for this book. And it says Friends. And the friends are apparently, here's Russia. And this is France, America, Israel, Australia, UAE and Japan. Why are these our friends and why not others? I can understand the absence of China and Pakistan, but why not others?
We have officially, Gaurav, the Ministry of External Affairs says we have around 36 strategic partners.
Okay.
But I picked these 7 out of the 36 because the depth and the intensity of our ties in terms of economic security, geopolitics is much higher with these 7 than compared to the ones which are lower down the list. So in terms of India's rise to become a leading power in the world, my argument in this book is these 7 are crucial. They are in a way like stepping stones or helping hands for us to go up the ladder, and these are important relationships that we have nurtured, cultivated over time, and we need to invest in these ties, because without these kind of friends, it's not only, many people think that to become a big power or great power or superpower, all you need to do is have high economic growth and build military muscle. Those 2 are of course key, but alongside that is the diplomacy to maintain a friendly and favorable international order that will enable our rise and will not block our rise. And for that favorable environment, these 7 are the best friends we can rely on.
So friends, it's called Friends, right? And India's closest strategic partners. I'm posting the link down in the description box. You can click on this link and order this book from Amazon. And Dr. Sreeram Chaulia says that this is a book worth reading because what propels a nation to superpower status is not simply military muscle or economic might. It's also a favorable environment that does not block your rise, and you need to have friends that enable that favorable environment. So, Dr. Chaulia, my first question to you is going to be, Trump has won and Vance is his deputy on number 2. It's very strange because the media in the US, especially CNN, was going all out saying Kamala Harris will win. And the kind of slanted coverage that I've seen in the US, people talk about Indian media. But this time I saw that US media was far, far more slanted. They had picked positions and they were very forceful about it. Every single day in their discussions, they would say, no, Kamala Harris. And why should Kamala Harris win? Because she's a woman and she's a woman of color. What are our policies? Her policies are that she is not Trump. I want your very, in brief, if you can tell us what happened. Why did Trump win the elections?
Yeah, this is of course one of our main friends, as which I described in the book, the US, and we have a strong relationship. So it's very important for us to understand the Trump phenomenon and why he prevailed over Kamala Harris. Because the next 4 years, at least, the bilateral comprehensive global strategic partnership with the US depends on, understanding and managing Trump, and also the forces that brought him to power. So I think the economy was a major issue, and there was a lot of dissatisfaction among wide cross section of people. What the Democrats and Kamala Harris did was to play this multiculturalism game, which is to talk about this minority group, that minority group, this ethnic group, that they divided the USA into like 15 tribes, and they thought that if we can pick on each one of them and appeal to them and to their racial or ethnic identity on the basis of being minorities, then it will be a winning combination. It didn't work out. A lot of minorities actually voted for Trump.
The Mexicans,
Latinos voted very large
sorry,
number.
I beg your pardon. The Latinos and even African Americans, the males,
black men,
they voted overwhelmingly for Trump.
Yeah. So it shows that if you try to break up a country into little pieces and then you say that each one of them deserves special attention, then you lose the big picture, right? Yeah, then you lose the overall electoral college, and that's what happened with Kamala Harris. So I think they have played this minorityism and this multiculturalism. The liberals, they took it too far, even in relations with India. I want to ask, now that this administration is leaving, we can go public and ask them, why is it that Joe Biden did not even bother to come to India for a bilateral visit in 4 years? He only stepped in India during the G20 summit, and on the side he had a bilateral with Prime Minister Modi. And why he was invited repeatedly for Republic Day to be our chief guest, declined. Finally, Emmanuel Macron, another friend of India, which I've described in the book, France stepped in and saved the day for us, and he was there for our Republic Day because the Americans were stalling. So they had an ideological bias against India, the liberals, and the same thing for which they lost in the domestic. They were also, of course, the US-India relationship was progressing nonetheless, but I would say there was a chance that if Kamala Harris had gotten elected and they continued down this path of judging India through that liberal minorityism and, this whole notion of, India, scrutinizing India for its alleged domestic failures and for human rights, democracy, these sort of things were not helping us with the overall relationship, So I think it's good in a way, in many ways, that force or that appeal has been rejected overwhelmingly by American voters. American voters are simply saying, the price of gasoline is high, the price of bread and eggs is high, and you are saying there is economic growth, but I'm not able to feel it, So a lot of middle and working class people who historically used to be with the Democrats, they jumped, and this time a lot of them voted for Trump. He got those votes in 2016 also, but this time it's more multiracial, where people are saying that don't look at us as part of some ethnic group. We are also, citizens of this country. We are Americans, and treat us like Americans who deserve a fair deal in terms of economy. So I think that was a fundamental reason why Kamala Harris, they read it wrong. They read the electorate wrong.
Yes.
They tried to bracket them and to, in a way, like I said, segment the population. And they had a strategy believing that this group, and if we just add up the math, it will be a winning. It didn't work out that because people are not willing to be boxed into that category. People are saying,
we are much more than that.
Yeah, we are citizens. We are Americans. Why don't you treat us as, in a way, they used to say that Trump was divisive. But if you see this election, 2024, the liberals, the Democrats, the machine was playing the division politics, and Trump was actually uniting the country. It's so ironic because they always said Trump is the most divisive, polarizing figure. He's splitting the country along whites versus non-whites, this and that. Ultimately, it turned out that the non-whites brought him to power.
Absolutely. One thing more. Also, the non-whites brought him to power because, like you said, the blacks and the Hispanics, etc. But one more thing is that Kamala Harris never came out with an agenda. I mean, if she became president, this is what she would do. Yeah. Trump supporters are garbage, and Trump is toxic, and Trump is a bad guy. But apart from that, there was no paper on policy that this is what we will do. Also,
Yeah.
Trump has been saying time and again, you guys are wasting so much of money on wars. I don't want to send our young men to war on foreign shores. Let's stop wars. I think that also resonated. Now, recently, Elon Musk, in a tweet, he's another very entertaining character, and I've started liking Elon Musk. He's
become
very
very he's become very powerful
Absolutely,
now. He's going to
absolutely.
be running some government efficiency office in the White House, apparently.
Absolutely.
So you've never heard of such a mega billionaire actually directly coming and taking a position in government, or from behind the scenes managing the makeup of the new government.
He's saying that you don't need make government smaller,
Yeah.
which is a great idea. Now, Trump, I beg your pardon, Elon Musk actually said recently that Trudeau will lose the elections, and he put it out on Twitter. And now this news is trending big time, and they're saying that Elon Musk is already somebody said that you need to help us get rid of this guy, Justin Trudeau, and he says he's losing elections. Then I went back and I sort of tried and found out Trump has called Justin Trudeau a far left lunatic.
Yeah, and I think he said something like, I remember during Trump's first term, he said he was trying to renegotiate NAFTA, the free trade agreement involving Canada and Mexico and the US.
Yes.
And he said, I've never met a more dishonest person in my life than Justin Trudeau. And that's Trump, for you, no political niceties in your face.
Yes.
And I think they're right. I mean, the trend lines show Canada is up for a regime change. They have election in 2025. And in a way, Trump's coming also will energize the opposition in Canada, the conservatives, the right wing, because they will believe that if Trump can make a comeback and be so successful and be this phenomenal political athlete who's broken down, fallen, and was subjected to all kinds of witch hunts and persecution by the Biden administration, and then here he makes a strong statement saying I'm still up and standing. I think Canada also, you will see change. Canada generally, of course, has a relatively weaker right wing compared to the US, but from my point of view, for Canada to make the next edition of this book, or whenever I write another one on Friends, is a long time away, and the first obstacle is people who are highly prejudiced and biased like Justin Trudeau, or who are transposing their domestic politics onto foreign relations. We would have liked friendly relations with Canada. If US is such an important strategic partner, in spite of the Biden-Harris, the bias that I mentioned, still they were still a little more balanced and more nuanced. They were not going out on the rooftops and screaming that India is committing extrajudicial killings in our country. So
as head of state, I think it does not
below the dignity.
Below dignity.
Whatever the fact of the matter is, it should have been dealt through their normal process, this legal process or whatever. So he was clearly, trying to milk it. He was also playing the same minoritism game that Kamala Harris tried and failed.
Yes.
So I'm pretty confident that Justin Trudeau is on his way out, and he will probably end up the same. I mean, Harris, of course, never won an election. Trudeau has been successful in the past. He has had 2 successes, but I think he's passed his
sell-by date. All right. So, Dr. Chaulia, Trump has said, not on one occasion, but multiple occasions, that as soon as I become president, I'll stop this Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours. Now, maybe not. Maybe not. 24 hours, it's not like an air conditioner. No, you switch on, switch off. It doesn't happen like that. But Trump has been very vocal about it. And how's he going to stop the war? Apart from the fact that he says, okay, here is an executive order. We are not giving a penny to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think he, of course, is a very bombastic person. And sometimes you have to take what he says with a pinch of salt, because, he's often playing to the gallery, especially during the election campaign. US commitments to some extent have been locked in, meaning over the last 2.5 years since the war started in 2022, both through the NATO structures and the bilateral assistance, the US will have to continue to support Ukraine to some extent. So it's not like it's going to just end the day Trump takes office, But what he will, of course, do is, I think, insist that, the Europeans and the Ukrainians themselves are saying that we will continue to fight until we have restored the status quo ante of 2022, if not 2014, when Crimea went to Russia.
Yes.
Now, I think he is going to say that you have not been able to achieve this in 2.5 years. and we have, expended dozens of billions of dollars already. So our taxpayers cannot bear this anymore. So you come up with a plan where, you slowly wind it down and sit down with Putin and come to some agreement where perhaps Ukraine will need to accept that there are some of its lost territories that for the moment it cannot regain until foreseeable future. But meanwhile, we'll at least start with a ceasefire or something like that. And I think Trump also believes that he has, his relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia has also been somewhat quote-unquote controversial, because he doesn't view these authoritarian leaders purely through the liberal lens of he's a bad dictator. Rather, he thinks of them as, this is a smart cookie, he's trying to get the best deal for his country, and now I'm coming and I'm going to make sure that he strikes a bargain with me, which is best for America.
He's always trying to make a deal, actually. Trump has seen this. Yeah.
So he doesn't judge people, and that's good news for us also, by the way, because you are not going to see this finger pointing and wagging that, so-called, there is some backsliding in democracy or human rights or minority rights in India. You will not see that. So likewise with Russia, he is of the view that, here is a country where there's been one leader for almost 23 years, 24 years, and we have to deal with him. We can't overthrow him, right? So he's just pragmatic in that sense, and he is transactional. So he may also be able to persuade Putin to make concessions. I mean, people think that Putin has the upper hand simply because he has the stronger military hand on the ground. But, his economy has been doldrums, right? And the Western sanctions have not crushed Russia, because the war economy and the war production and all that, but it's not sustainable, the growth that they're showing in the long run. So, and Russia has been declining as an economy. If you see overall, it's just about $2 trillion. India's surpassed Russia long ago, and India's a much bigger economy and is heading for 5 or 10 trillion. So in the long run, it's not sustainable. So I think Trump may throw in some sanctions relief to the Russians, and will then may say that, okay, at least you withdraw from some areas. If not, okay, you are occupying some 18 to 20% of Russia, of Ukraine. At least you withdraw from some areas so that I can claim that I got a fair deal for the I
have a bargaining chip.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Putin might take it, because see, for Putin, he has already lost a lot in terms of manpower and material and resources, right? He will also want to ultimately come out saying, I won, quote unquote. That will be his interpretation. Politicians always say, I won. So Trump is a kind of character, very unorthodox, against the advice of his own bureaucracy, the State Department, the so-called deep state, and all these, liberal internationalists who are in the various arms of the US government. He will say that, we've had enough of this and I want to do something out of the box. He tried that. If you remember, your viewers will remember, Gaurav, when during his first term, he met Kim Jong-un thrice, not once or twice. And no American president before him had even bothered or even thought it was below the dignity to even have a face-to-face with the North Korean dictator. But Trump thought that he could, through his personal chemistry and doing something out of the box unusual, be able to persuade Kim Jong-un. It didn't work. Ultimately, Kim Jong-un would not give up his nuclear weapons, right? And so Trump walked out of that. There was no deal. But he at least tried something different, as opposed to the liberal, the traditional playbook is treat them, don't even touch them with a barge pole. These are untouchable. These are very bad characters. These are villains on the world stage. People like Kim Jong-un or the Iranians or the Russians. Chinese, of course, are different. We should talk about that. But most of the authoritarian regimes, instead of judging them on ideological grounds, Trump will simply say, can they do something that will save American lives, save American resources, and help our companies and jobs? If so, I'm willing to go for it.
Realpolitik.
Yeah. And very, I would say,
very pragmatic, business-like guy.
And he wants to show that he's always delivering on his promises, So I think he will push the two sides, and you will see some kind of movement in 2025. The war will not end the day Trump takes office. I think that's just unrealistic. But
in a few months, it might start to pipe down.
It will wind down.
Yeah. So, even then, you see, how can you achieve peace unless you talk to Russia? Now, they've been having all these fancy summits, and over 190 countries were invited very recently, 2-3 months back in Switzerland, and everybody came. India also sent a delegation, and they had this huge thing that, okay, we are signing this declaration. It doesn't mean anything to Putin. So if Putin has invaded Ukraine, which he has, the idea is somehow to pressurize Putin and Zelensky to sit together and talk. Unless they talk, how can there be disengagement? How can there be peace? But so far the world has been saying that, we will not talk to Putin. That, they want to break Russia, defeat Russia. That is the end. The end game is not peace here. I think the end game is somehow to defeat Russia. So keep on supplying weapons to this Zelensky fellow. Now, Putin has also spoken, since we are speaking about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Dr. Chaulia, he's said about NATO also, and apparently what Trump thinks is that NATO is not pulling its weight in terms of funding.
Yeah.
So he says that everybody should equally contribute. Why should I lift your weight? Now, the European economy has been under the American protection umbrella for a very, very long time. Even after the Second World War, for a very decades on decades, they've been under the protection of the Americans. And except for, I think, the English, the French, English and the French, not many of them are known as people having professional armies which can actually go and fight across. They might have sent their troops to Afghanistan, but the major player there also was the United States of America. So that way, do you think Putin is again going to his old grouse against the NATO
expansion? On that front, actually there are no candidate countries that are likely to come in anytime soon. That they will not bring in Ukraine or Georgia, and some of these have been kept in the halfway house without full membership for a long time. And I think Trump will emphasize more of this, saying that we don't want to aggravate the situation further by taking this membership and expansion forward. So to that extent, that may also be a kind of chip that he will dangle towards the Russians to say that we don't have any aggressive intent towards you. He may want to convey that as part of his peace deal brokering, and give some guarantee that there's no need for any further NATO expansion, because Sweden and Finland have now joined. And in many ways, NATO is already on Russia's doorstep, and since the war began, in a way, geopolitically, Russia has become more insecure because NATO has expanded even further. So I don't think they should push for more. And you're right, Trump has a different view. Trump thinks that the others are all freeloaders and that they are just free riding on the US shoulders,
He has said as much.
Yeah. And this is going to create a kind of internal tensions between the Europeans and the US, the transatlantic tensions.
Yes.
Whenever Trump is in power, last time Macron was on record saying that NATO has become brain dead, meaning there is no leadership anymore, because the Americans under Trump don't take on those kind of roles and responsibilities, global roles. So I think it may also make Putin a little more assured that there is no united West. Whenever there is Trump, there is a lot of internal fissure and conflict, because a lot of the Western countries are still driven by liberal ideology, and they will clash with Trump on those fronts, because Trump is the antithesis or the antichrist for the liberals, So because of that, Russia might feel that, okay, now there's no ganging up of the Europeans and the Americans, everybody to put pressure on me. So that may also help to tone down Russian belligerence,
Yes. Absolutely. So with that, again, now we have discussed this war in whatever way we have. He's also said the same thing about the Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran, 24 hours old, which is again, I think, a fistful of salt, if not a pinch of salt, because to my mind, I think the situation in West Asia is far more complicated than Russia-Ukraine. That is complicated. There is no doubt about it. I'm not saying that is simple. Russia-Ukraine is complicated. This one is far more complicated. There are layers of religion and culture and Jews on one side and Muslims on the other side. But the Abraham Accords were a good step.
Yeah.
They were a good step. Now the Abraham Accords are pretty much non-existent as we speak today, because 7th of October changed everything. Dr. Chaulia, my question to you is, do you think Trump is again going to push for the Abraham Accords and say that, this is the way to go forward? What do you feel?
Yeah, so UAE, one of the most important countries and one of the friends of India, which I've covered in this book, has normalized relations with Israel. So have a few more Arab countries in the first wave of the Abraham Accords during Trump 1.0. So Trump, he has some unfinished business in that region where the most important country is Saudi Arabia, and he has been very close to the Saudi ruler Mohammed bin Salman, and through family and through Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, was very close to MBS. So they had been working on how to normalize relations with Israel. And so the US is in a way, although they say that they are very hardline against Iran, if you take the Arab countries and Israel for a moment, leave Iran for a moment aside, they have got allies among both sides, on both sides, right? As a big powers generally in a particular region, they try to have allies or partners who are from opposing sides, so that they can come in as arbiters or sell weapons to both sides, or be there as a big brother who will solve the problem. So in this case, Saudi is also a major ally of the US, and so is Israel, right? So I think, but for Saudi, Mohammed bin Salman has gone public saying that the so-called two-state solution for Palestine is not on the cards, and we are not pushing for those things. So they don't need that. What they want is for some of the fighting and the killing to stop, and for some kind of a ceasefire, and they'll take it, and then they will look for normalization of relations with Israel. And Trump can do that because of the close ties he has with Netanyahu also. In fact, Netanyahu was feeling friendless all these last 4 years, and in between there were another Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett also.
Yes.
They were feeling friendless because, again, of the same reason, the Biden and the Harris administration, they were looking at it purely from the lens of ideology, and that the Palestinians are oppressed and they need justice, that kind of framework. Now with Trump, it's very blunt, Israel first and last. So what that means is that he has latitude with both sides. So again, he has an opportunity. I mean, Trump, being a very narcissistic politician, at one point he said something like, I'd love to get the Nobel Peace Prize, or that he would be nominated for it. Maybe that's a legacy. You never know. I mean, if he can bring about a ceasefire in Ukraine, and if he can use his leverage with Saudi and with Israel to persuade the Israelis to, you have achieved most of the big targets. You have taken out Hassan Nasrallah of Hezbollah. You've taken out the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar.
Ismail Haniyeh is gone.
Yeah, Ismail Haniyeh is gone. You have broken at least the top hierarchy of these most wanted enemies and proxies of Iran. You have also shown Iranians that there is a limit to how far they can go, right? And you have to coexist in that region. End of the day, the geography is such that you can't wipe out your enemies and prevail over them, right? I mean, the Israelis have...
It can't be done.
It can't. They have this, what they call the Dahiya doctrine. And in fact, I talk about it in Friends also, that while India and Israel cooperate a lot on counter-terrorism, we cannot use that kind of disproportionate force that the Israelis do, because for various reasons. Our geography is different. We have nuclear-armed adversaries. And secondly, India is rising and going to become a great power. So we need a lot of friends, For Israel, they are survivors. It's a small country. They can never become a great power. They just need the backing of the US. That's all to survive. They don't care. 190 other countries, 91 saying we oppose what Israel is doing, or they don't care if somebody says Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. All they say is, do I have the support of the US or not? Bottom line. But India cannot afford. We need a wide variety of friends. So likewise, I think you will see going forward a lot of such changes in these big conflict areas. And let's talk about Asia also, Gaurav, because Indo-Pacific is the key theater, and what Trump does here,
I was coming to China.
What Trump does here is going to be very, very vital for us.
No, absolutely. Now, coming to the Indo-Pacific and let's say China, because that is the interesting piece for you and me, China. Now, this whole China plus one thing is, the Americans are saying China plus one, and I think Trump may like to carry it forward. Trump has also made it very plain. His personal relationship with Putin is one factor, with Russia is one factor. There was an interview, they're saying that, Putin is a killer, and he said lots of killers in America also. So, he said that. You must have seen
Correct.
that. But not so for China. For China, now they're shifting out industry slowly and slowly from China. And a lot of Americans are saying, American companies are saying that we need to, shift out of China, because China is the primary national security threat. The Europeans feel that, the Australians feel that, the Japanese feel that, the Indians feel it, the Americans feel it, the Canadians feel it, everybody feels it. How do you think Trump is going to oppose this whole China factor? Because unless you hit them economically and hit them hard, which I think he should now try to emphasize to Elon Musk, that boss, you need to get your manufacturing out of China slowly, because China manufactures a bulk of Tesla cars. So if
and
that
Apple phones as well.
Apple phone, Apple phones also. But Apple phone production has shifted to India, a part of it, a significant part of it, but not so for Tesla. Tesla is still being
Heavily
manufactured in
reliant on
China.
China,
So heavily reliant on China. So where do you think Trump is going to go with that?
Yeah, Trump is an economic nationalist. He is not a liberal internationalist. So first and foremost, he's obsessed with trade deficits. He looks at the list. We are exporting only this much to China, and they are exporting this much to us. The trade deficit is ballooning. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. Last time I imposed massive tariffs on China. This time I'll go even further. He's now saying 60%. I mean, that level of trade between two countries, close to more than $500 billion, and then you're saying that I'll impose 60% tariffs. That will be highly disruptive, and that may actually worsen the inflation temporarily in the US, because they depend on cheap Chinese imports. But I think he will try to extract the most from China by restarting the trade war. That one is assured, That's his trademark thing, He will always go for trade war with the number one adversary. And that I have no doubt about it. But on the other hand, what will happen, and last time also what we saw during Trump 1.0 is, after a while he says, okay, I have taught them a lesson. Now, if they give more market access to American companies, I'll come to a deal with them. I'll strike a deal, and trade deficit.
His whole thing is never that you are my enemy. He says, can we strike a deal which is in my favor?
Yeah. So to that extent, he's not very firm in his convictions either. Trump is kind of like a little bit slippery, meaning over time he relents also. He's not like continuous pressure. So that's actually the downside from our point of view, because US-India strategic partnership, counterbalancing China, is the number one motivation in many ways. So for that, we would want firmness from the American side. With Biden, what they did was, apart from, they maintained the Trump tariffs, they did not lift the Trump tariffs last 4 years.
Yes.
And secondly, they also tightened the technology transfer. They put a lot of export controls on high-end technologies, which the Chinese were stealing to go up the ladder in terms of advanced fields like quantum and semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and all that. So now there is a kind of a realization in the US that we gave away too much to China too easily, and we've got to be tougher. And I think that will continue under Trump. As far as the military side goes, I think the freedom of navigation operations, all those things the US has been doing in Indo-Pacific, the Quad construct with India, Australia, I call the Quad countries quasi-friends of India also, because they are allies of the US, and because we have a partnership with the US, Japan, Australia are also getting much closer to India because of the US factor.
Absolutely.
So those things were revived under Trump actually. 2017, people forget, even though Trump is, like I said, not very firm in any conviction on any matter, that Quad was revived under Trump in 2017, not before that. So, and Indo-Pacific, the very construct of Indo-Pacific was not even there in the official US policy until Trump came, they mainstream it. Before it, they used to call it Asia-Pacific.
Yes.
So, on all those counts, Trump was quite strong, but what we would like is credibility of commitment. This is where Trump is most slippery, because Trump is at the end of the day a populist. He doesn't care about so much the balance of power in Asia or in Indo-Pacific. He'll simply say, are American workers and companies getting some benefits or not, He
reads the room.
That's right. That's all. That's all.
And he knows what to say.
That's all. That's all.
So tell me something. Now I'll very quickly shift. Trump, you said that he's an economic nationalist. F404, F414, we signed a deal. The Prime Minister went to the US. Everything hunky-dory, except that the engines are not coming. And which is why Tejas can't fly. Now, there is another thing. I've spoken to some senior Air Force officers who have now retired, and they say that while we have American helicopters and we have American drones and we have American technology in the Air Force, we don't have fixed wing fighter. We also have big transport aircraft.
Yeah, C-130 and Hercules and
all that, Globemaster. We have all of that, but we don't have fixed wing fighters or fighter aircraft, American fighter aircraft. So we have the Rafale, which is essentially French, and
Sukhois
we have Sukhois and we have MiGs, and we even have a squadron or two of Tejas, but we do not have American fighters. Now, this is something that the US has wanted to pitch to India, buy from us. Case in point is the F-21. Case in point, and we'll make this for you. This is an F-16, but it's modified and it has the DNA of the F-35 and the F-22 Raptor, and this is an A-grade plane, etc. Whatever pitch they have given now. My question is this stopping of the supply of these two engines arm twisting, or is there a genuine problem? Is it arm twisting?
I would say in terms of defense cooperation, there's like a steady growth in US-India partnership, and I show that in the chapter 3 of the book, which is on the US partnership. But you don't get spectacular returns because they have a lot of conditionalities and clearances and the whole bureaucracy for moving forward many things. We had the Defense Technology Trade Initiative, DTTI,
yes,
that was signed like more than a decade ago. It did not yield any spectacular outcomes. It was just slow and steady, small scale coordination that was happening. So with the US, I think they still have this mindset that we should sell stuff and not share any proprietary know-how to anyone. We are cutting edge. We are the best in the world. We should not just give away our core advantages and just easily give it even to our allies or partners.
Yes.
So India, of course, is what they call major defense partner, which is kind of like a quasi-ally type of a status, not a full ally. And they, I think, are of the view that we should not just let this rising country become fully self-reliant. That's my reading. So whether it is Trump or Biden, the establishment view is that we should give them in bits and we should sell stuff. And with Trump, he brags, be it with Saudi Arabia, be it with Israel, be it with India, anyone who is a major defense partner of the US and with whom they have long military sales history, he likes to brag that this prime minister or this president just ordered another 50 billion or another 100 billion of American aircraft or weapons.
He likes that. He likes that
because he shows that that's how I'm creating jobs in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or in Michigan. So I think he will want to continue being this seller. But I think the times have changed since Trump's first term to now. We are moving forward with our self-reliance agenda, and we will not want to be in this buyer-seller thing. So I think these delays should be overcome. But he will always say that we jointly co-design, co-manufacture. We train your engineers and your technicians. We ultimately hand over everything, and then you can make your stuff on your own. Will you become a second China? No, they have somewhere in the back of their mind. Let's be frank. No friend is completely selfless. They are friends with us because they get benefits from us. So
and vice versa.
And of course, we also benefit. We are not being exploited by the US. We are a very confident country under Narendra Modi. So at the same time, there is that hangover of not wanting to give everything on a platter to India.
Like they did with China 40 years back.
That's right. And of course, there are strong supporters of the US-India partnership in the Capitol Hill, in the Congress, and we have a huge growing. You see this election, Gaurav, the way Trump came out openly and spoke about Hindu Americans and
yes,
how they are the core base for him and how much he loves them. So overall, I think we will have a huge lobby there now. The lobby that we normally have in Washington, D.C., will be multiplied manyfold because the diaspora and all. And most interesting factor, we spoke about the other minority groups, Gaurav, at the beginning of the podcast. Indian Americans, the data suggests at least 10 to 15% there is a movement in favor of Republicans, in favor of Trump. Historically, it used to be like more than 70 to 80% used to always vote for Democrats, and for Biden, for Obama in the past. Right, and even for Hillary Clinton, this election there is a shift, and a lot of them are enthused by Trump's message. So they will all be very powerful, or like power brokers there.
Also, that he's perceived to be a a friend of Prime Minister Modi, And
that fact is there.
Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar and all of that.
We'll see a lot of the bromance again now.
Yeah.
The bromance is coming back. And Biden was awkward, and secondly, because of the ideological lack of congruence, because they were judging India through some very biased lenses,
Yes.
that there's something wrong with, minorities and
the democracy index.
Yeah.
Or some.
So I think all those things will now be in place, and I think the defense relationship will also go forward because the diaspora has historically pushed for these things. And now we have more than 4 million Indian Americans there, and many of them are now very close to Trump. They are going to be in very senior positions in the new Trump administration from 2025. So those things we can, take advantage of or capitalize. If there are delays, if there are, long gaps between promise and delivery, we can push the Americans faster, because we can't afford the power gap with China to widen in our own backyard, right? And Trump doesn't understand those things. Generally, typically, Trump doesn't care whether China is becoming a hegemon in Asia or something. He doesn't think on those lines.
Yes.
He'll simply say that if China is giving me money, it's also okay. It's also a partner, and I'll also deal. If India is giving me money, I'll also deal with them. But
he's a businessman, basically.
Yeah. But there is a system. There is a bureaucracy, the so-called permanent deep state, or whatever you want to call it, the permanent establishment. They will say that India should be prioritized more. So we have to work with them. We have to work with the diaspora. We have to work with the India caucus in the Congress, and that should be our game, going forward. Our External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has already said that with Trump coming in, he expects more hedging to happen. What he's trying to say is that people are unsure about whether Trump will really commit the US to come to your support if you are attacked by China, right? Or if in the case of Europe, if you are attacked by Russia. So partners and allies, they need assurance. That will not come from Trump. Trump will continue to say, nobody is a partner. Even my partner can be my enemy because the partner is cheating me or is taking advantage of me, right? But the system is such that we should be able to understand which are the parts of the American polity and the society which can be our reliable long-term advocates and lobbies. And I think we're going to work on that very steadily. And we have those entries directly to Trump now because of the politics and the changing currents of politics in the US.
Going further on weapons, and this is going to be my last question to you, is, Dr. Chaulia, assume we ordered 10 squadrons of Rafale. I'm just throwing my hat in the ring like that. Let's be a part of this. 10 squadrons of Rafale, each squadron being 18 aircraft. So we order 180 aircraft. Big, massive order. Mega order.
Tens of billions of dollars.
Tens of billions of dollars. And there are two companies in the fray, or two platforms in the fray. One is the Rafale and the other one is the F-15X Eagle, which is an American platform, and this is a French platform. The French would happily transfer technology for that amount of money. They would do it most happily. 180 aircraft, go for it. The Americans won't do it.
Yeah.
Or they'll say it has to go through Congress, and it has to go through Pentagon, and it has to go through this and that. There are a lot of stoppages. If India, so the question here is this, that, war with China, at least that's what I think. I believe that war with China, and war can take several shapes. So it's not necessarily us firing ballistic missiles at each other, but I'm saying war with China is coming. It could be an open economic war. It could be a kinetic conflict. It could be anything. It could be a skirmish at the border. I don't know. Unless we have access to top class weapons, right? How are we going to manage this? We need access to top technology, which is better than Chinese technology. It's not enough to match them aircraft for aircraft. We must have more aircraft, and we must have better aircraft if we are, this whole two-front war thing. So my question is, if the Americans are so picky about it, nahi dena aapko. We'll not give it to you, right? Or we'll give it to you, just buy. You want 10 squadrons, go ahead. Yeah, that's all right. You can buy from us. But we are not going to make in India. We're not going to transfer technology, etc. Then how does India do it?
I think we have diversified. In fact, US, the last data from the Stockholm Institute for Peace Research, SIPRI, which is the definitive data about defense purchases and military spending worldwide, it shows that the US accounts for only about 11% as of 2023-24 of the total foreign weapons that we are buying. France is far ahead. France already crossed 30%. It's almost neck and neck with Russia now. Almost. Wow. And France may overtake. If your scenario, if we buy a lot many more from France, France will become the number one and will surpass Russia, and Israel is somewhere also there in the fray. So the US is not necessarily our topmost defense supplier. That's the objective fact. Therefore, they are itching to get more of the pie, and our view will be that no, we have other options. It's not like the US is the only one. Sometimes we have chosen the Israeli option over the US option.
Yes,
we have chosen the French over the US option. So with Russia, of course, because of the sanctions, and I don't know in the long term whether they can sustain that kind of advanced high-tech weapons manufacturing. Like the BrahMos was the peak of our cooperation with advanced weaponry. I don't know if the Russians can sustain that. My chapter on Russia says that we've got a lot of legacy partnership with them, which will take us forward. But I don't see it as a very futuristic, partnership that will, yield huge benefits going forward from now on. So US will remain in the fray, and Trump especially, they will want to push us to buy more, and to they will say, you're trying to diversify, don't become over reliant on France. Earlier you said you are over reliant on Russia, now you are committing a blunder if you become over reliant on France. So they will want to come in, and I think we may want to also look at that and say, okay, maybe at least the US should get 20%. And of course, at end of the day, like you said, the test always is with critical and emerging technologies also, not just in defense. The other initiative, the ISET and all these,
yes,
they have to move forward. We have now signed a semiconductors agreement with the US. We are doing very advanced space cooperation. Our NASA and ISRO are cooperating. There are all these, frontier areas in which we expect more from the US. And our argument is always, we are a democracy, China is a dictatorship. Do you want Asia to be dominated by, a dictatorship or a democracy? So you should help us to counterbalance the Chinese. You should help us to build our capabilities. So that argument we'll continue to make, and we'll try to extract more from the US. But with Trump, it's always tricky, because if you want to extract something, he will also say, what am I getting in return? You can't say something ambiguous like balance of power in Asia. For him, it means nothing.
It means nothing.
It means nothing. He'll say, how many Boeing jets are you buying? Show me the money that you're transferring to our treasury. So I think it's going to be a difficult balancing act, but we will continue to make sure that if there's a critical need, like you said, like a major gap, we should get it from the US. And even with the satellite imagery and the mapping, as you know, Gaurav, we could thwart attempted Chinese infiltration in Tawang sector,
yes,
in late 2022 with the US intelligence, and it was not denied by our own establishment. So those sort of more intangible things, even in the oceans, is not just buying the predator drones. We will need a lot more real-time, what we call MDA, maritime domain awareness, all these things. The US has the advanced means to assist us. So I would say it's a friend with benefit. But under Trump, we have to understand his politics and play his politics and play to his whims and fancies to some extent. Of course, our bottom line is our bottom line, and this relationship we have to sustain, because without this, like I said, we cannot rise to the top, and we cannot face the Chinese challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for talking to us, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia. It was indeed wonderful. And friends, once again, friends. So friends, once again, friends. And this is India's closest strategic partners. I just want to remind you that I'm putting the link, the Amazon link to this book in the description box. Go ahead and buy it. It's a wonderful book. I'm also reading it, and whatever little I've seen, it makes a lot of sense to me, though I've not read the entire book, but I plan to this weekend. Thank you very much for watching this wonderful podcast with Dr. Sreeram Chaulia. I'll be back again with another special guest very soon. Till then, take care and Jai Hind.